He wasn't meant to remember. A blind Marine, carved by war scars, abandoned by the very nation he'd sworn to protect. Now standing face to face with a German shepherd deemed too dangerous to be allowed to live. Yet when their eyes locked, something ancient awakened. Not a memory, not mere instinct, something sacred. The dog, shattered, weathered by battle, and betrayed, did not snarl. Instead, he sat, as though he had been waiting years for this man to return to him. What happened next was not the product of training. It was grace, and what follows is a story of redemption, of a connection so deep that even death could not sever it, and a whisper that traveled through years of silence. Before we begin, where are you watching from? Leave your city or country in the comments. Type Amen if you believe second chances aren't accidents. They're divine. Share this with someone who still believes in miracles. And if you do, subscribe, because the story may be the one that lingers in your heart forever. Morning sunlight blazed over Tucson, Arizona, like a spotlight thrown onto a stage made of dust and heat. The desert air was crisp and dry, heavy with the smell of gravel, motor oil, and cactus pollen. On the outskirts of town, behind a wire-fence compound and a dull brown gate, stood the Tucson Police Department's K-9 Rehabilitation Unit, a last stop for dogs deemed too damaged. Here, they were offered one final chance or silence. Inside the south yard, a lone German shepherd paced inside a chain-link kennel. His nails struck the cement with a sharp, rhythmic click. A weathered metal plate bore his name, Rook. Rook was 6 years old, bred from a working line, tall, broad, his amber eyes like knives cutting through every stare. One ear stood erect, the other bent from an old wound. A deep scar split the bridge of his muzzle. His coat, coarse and black mixed with sable, was matted at the neck where a tactical collar had once been worn. But it wasn't his battered body that unsettled his handlers. It was his eyes, always fixed, always calculating. Rook had served in Iraq, then Syria, under private security contracts. He had walked away from 2 bomb blasts and 3 different handlers. Now, 3 months into his stay in Tucson, he had bitten 3 officers, hospitalizing one. No one dared step inside his kennel anymore. In the briefing room, Captain Mitch Rossner, head of the K-9 division, stood with his arms crossed, his face hard as stone. Late 50s, solid build, sun-brown skin, and silver-streaked hair combed back like dry river rock. His voice, once thunderous in the field, had mellowed with age, but lost none of its authority. "We're out of options," he said, dropping a folder onto the metal table. "Behavioral rehab failed. He doesn't respond to food, or to commands, or to dominance. He's untrainable. Either we send him back to the contractor, or we file for euthanasia." A ripple of unease moved through the room. In the corner stood Officer Dana Crowley, 28, the youngest on the team, tall and lean, freckles stubborn against her fair skin, hair pulled into a tight bun. Raised on an Idaho farm around working dogs, she hadn't joined the force to chase suspects. She came to mend what others wrote off as lost. Her green eyes flared with quiet defiance. She opened her mouth, then stopped. Rossner noticed. "If you've got something to say, Crowley, say it." Dana took a breath. "Just one more day. We've had traumatized dogs come around before." 3 bites, Rossner shot back. "He's not a dog, Crowley. He's a loaded weapon without a safety." Outside, wind stirred the dust like an omen. An hour later, as Rossner headed back to his office, the front gate guard buzzed in a visitor. The man who entered wore a faded Marine Corps t-shirt, desert boots worn thin at the soles, and khaki slacks folded with precise military creases at the ankle. He stood tall but moved deliberately, a long white cane tapping ahead of him. His skin was deep bronze, beard neat but slightly uneven, his face calm in the way of someone who had long ago learned to hear silence. Though his eyes were closed behind lightly tinted glasses, they shifted faintly, as if still following shadows. This was Staff Sergeant Eli Morrow, 36, retired U.S. Marine, twice decorated for valor. He had served in Afghanistan, Kandahar, where an IED had taken his sight. His file recorded commendations, then a quiet withdrawal from service. And then nothing. His voice was low, measured, unforgettable. Dana met him in the entryway, clipboard in hand, trying not to stare. "You're Morrow?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," he replied with a nod. "A friend at Camp Pendleton said there's a dog here no one can reach." She arched a brow. "And you think you can?" Eli shifted his stance, tapping his cane lightly. "I don't think anything. I just want to try." After a moment's hesitation, curiosity overtaking protocol, Dana waved him inside. The walk to the south yard was slow. Eli counted steps in silence, posture upright despite grit catching in his boots. When they reached Rook's kennel, Dana slowed and motioned toward it, momentarily forgetting he couldn't see. "He's right in front of you," she murmured. Rook was already there at the gate, utterly still, ears forward, tail still. "Good," Eli said quietly. "He sees me." Dana almost laughed. "He sees everyone, then usually tries to kill them." Eli ignored her. He stepped until he stood just outside the gate, cane resting at his side. He didn't crouch. He didn't reach out. He simply stood. "Name's Eli," he said softly. "Staff Sergeant, United States Marine Corps." Rook made no sound. No growl. Just one slow blink. "I've been in places," Eli continued. "Heard bombs close enough to taste their teeth. Smelled blood and sand." He tilted his head slightly. "You too, I think." Dana froze, watching. "You're angry," Eli murmured. "I was too. But you're not broken." Something shifted. Rook moved forward, pressing his nose through the bars until Eli could feel his breath. Eli's lips curved faintly. "Yeah, that's it." Dana let out the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. From the control booth above, Rossner watched through glass, surprised Morrow had gotten this far without incident. He hit the intercom. "Crowley, get this man a temporary clearance badge. 1 week with the dog. If he gets bit, it's on you." Dana looked at Eli, then Rook, who now sat, ears forward, eyes fixed on the man who didn't flinch at his past. "You just earned yourself a second chance, boy," she whispered. Eli extended his hand, hovering just above Rook's muzzle. "Me too," he whispered back. And then he lowered himself into a seat. The pen fell into absolute silence. Dana hit the record button again. She had stopped it earlier, stunned, leaning back slightly as if the smallest shift might shatter whatever was unfolding. Robic finally murmured, "What the hell?" Eli let out a breath so soft it was barely there and rested his hand in Rook's fur. "You're not mad," he said quietly. "You're just waiting for someone who remembers where you came from." Upstairs, another figure stepped into the observation booth. Captain Mitch Rossner, his uniform still dark with sweat from his morning run. He crossed his arms and fixed his eyes on the monitor. "How long's he been in there?" 3 minutes, Dana replied without glancing away. 3 minutes longer than anyone else has lasted, Rossner muttered. His gaze stayed locked on Eli. "You're telling me he's never met that dog before?" Dana hesitated. "I'm telling you that's what the logs show." Rossner's frown deepened. Inside the enclosure, Eli had lowered himself beside Rook. His knee cracked at the effort, but he paid it no mind. "You want out of here?" he murmured. "But only if it doesn't mean leaving yourself behind." "I get that." Rook pressed his head against Eli's leg, his breathing slowing. "I don't have eyes anymore," Eli whispered, "but you and I still see." Dana powered off the camera. She'd captured enough. Later that afternoon, Eli sat in the open-air waiting space outside the unit, sipping weak coffee from a paper cup that tasted faintly of plastic and regret. He was alone, though not unobserved. Rook lay asleep at his feet. Dana came out, hands tucked into her pockets, and crossed to him. "Never seen anything like that," she said. Without turning, Eli replied, "I've seen too much of it." She took a seat beside him. "You know him?" "I know what he is." Dana studied him for a moment. "You're not just a Marine, are you?" Eli's smile was faint. "Once I was just a kid trying not to die." Her eyes shifted to Rook. "He hasn't moved from your side all day." "He won't," Eli said. "Not unless he's ordered to." As the sun sank past the Tucson skyline, shadows stretched long across the mix of concrete and iron fencing. Dana checked her watch and stood. Rossner wants to see you tomorrow. 0900. About what? About staying. Eli didn't answer right away. He reached down, fingers tracing Rook's neck, feeling muscle and steady breath. He saved me today, too, he said quietly, just not in a way anyone else would notice. The desert wind rattled loose siding against the kennel walls as midnight settled over Tucson. The rehab facility was quiet, but never still. Air moved through the outdoor pens, carrying the faint scent of mesquite, rust, and distant creosote. In a small, windowless room beside the handler's quarters, Eli Merrill lay on a narrow cot, one arm behind his head, the other resting across his stomach. His unseeing eyes were closed, but his mind stayed restless. Sleep had never come easily, not since Kandahar. But that night, it took him suddenly, like slipping beneath the surface of water. And in the dream, there was a man, standing in a narrow concrete hallway, face in shadow, clad in tactical black. His voice cut through the air, sharp and guttural, barking a phrase in German. Sitz, bleib. Eli didn't need a translation to feel the weight of the command. A German shepherd sat before him, rigid, eyes forward, waiting. The man turned, but his face remained hidden, and still Eli felt the strange pull of familiarity. Rook was there, too, not pacing, not tense, just waiting. Eli woke with a jolt, gripping the edge of the cot. Sweat clung to him despite the cold, and the echo of that voice still hummed in his head. German, a language he didn't know, one he hadn't heard since deployment, lingered as if it had always been with him. He sat up, rubbed the back of his neck, reached for his boots. From the corner came a soft whine. Rook rose from the rug he'd claimed as his bed and padded over, resting his head on Eli's knee. His amber eyes held a calm that had replaced the predator's focus from the week before. You heard it too? Eli murmured, stroking between Rook's ears. Didn't you? By morning, the whole thing might have blurred into another fragment of combat memory, if not for what happened when Eli reached into his duffel's side pocket for his medkit. Between a cracked bottle of ibuprofen and a folded t-shirt sat a collar. Not the nylon one Rook wore now, but old leather, worn and stiff from years of sweat and dust. The brass tag was almost smooth, yet part of a serial number remained, along with 3 letters, EZH. Eli frowned. He hadn't packed it, hadn't even seen it before. He held it out. Rook stared at it, then gave one low bark. That afternoon, as the sun burned away the cool edge of morning, Officer Dana Crowley sat hunched over a database terminal in the back office. Her jacket was tossed over the chair, hair loose from the humidity trapped between concrete walls. Fingers flew over the keys, her eyes narrowed behind reading glasses. Something about Rook unsettled her, not like dangerous dogs do, but like secrets do, the kind with too many layers. She had been combing through military and private K-9 records for 2 hours. Rook wasn't in any domestic military database. His chip ID had been added only after he arrived in the U.S. That left one option: foreign contracting. Shadow deployments. Dogs that existed only off the books. She narrowed her search to Middle Eastern operations from 6 to 8 years back. One entry caught her eye, a brief, heavily redacted report titled Operation Winter Halo Syria. It referenced a K-9 asset, designation RZK-17, listed as recovered, reassigned. No handler, no unit, tagged an I, non-intervention protocol, meaning no oversight, no review. Someone had buried it deep. Her supervisor, Lieutenant Gus Moreno, stepped in, coffee mug in hand, its faded lettering reading first in, last out. He was stocky, early 60s, skin weathered by sun, mustache too stubborn to go gray. Still chasing ghosts, Crowley? He asked. Trying to find out who trained Rook before we got him, she said without looking up. You think it matters now? It matters if whatever trained him broke him. It matters if someone's lying about his history. Moreno sighed, leaned over to glance at her screen. You think this winter halo is tied to him? I'm not guessing anymore. I'm starting to know. Meanwhile, Eli met Captain Rossner in the K-9 yard. A few trainees worked dogs in the background. Rossner had called the meeting under the guise of checking Rook's progress. His arms were folded, sunglasses hiding his eyes. He listens to you better than anyone else. That's because I'm not giving him orders, Eli said. Then what are you doing? Eli hesitated, lifting the leather collar. I think I've known him before. You saying this dog served with you overseas? I'm saying he reacts to me like I used to command him, even in a language I don't speak. Rossner glanced toward Rook, sitting quietly in the shade, untethered, eyes on Eli. Sure you're not imagining it? Eli handed him the collar. This isn't in his file, Rossner said. No, Eli answered softly, but it was in my bag. Rossner's brow furrowed. You're telling me you've been carrying classified material without knowing it? I'm telling you someone wants me to remember. They stood in silence. That night, in her small apartment above a downtown bookstore, Dana sat on her couch surrounded by printed files, redacted pages, screenshots from encrypted forums. One name kept surfacing in the darker corners of defense contractor records. Easy. Finally, she called someone she hadn't spoken to in years. The voice that answered was crisp and female. Crowley. I need deployment records from Syria. Non-government contractors. Especially K9. You realize what you're asking? I do. I also have a name. That's not a name. It's a call sign. I need to know who used it. You're chasing ghosts, Dana. The kind that ruin careers. Dana looked toward the window, where storm clouds were rolling in. Maybe. But one of those ghosts is in our kennel. And today he sat at the feet of a blind Marine like he'd been waiting 6 years for it. Early morning haze hung over Tucson, softening the desert edges, muting the sunrise. Inside the K9 rehab compound, the air felt still, as if holding its breath. In the command trailer, Eli Marrow sat across from a man he hadn't seen in 7 years, Lieutenant Colonel Mason Holt. Late 50s, square jaw, short salt and pepper hair, eyes pale gray like winter skies. His uniform was immaculate, his boots polished like he'd never left the service. His handshake was brief, his voice clipped, but the wear showed lines deeper, eyes darker. You shouldn't be here, Holt said flatly. Eli leaned, leaning forward slightly, hands clasped together. That dog shouldn't either. Holt didn't flinch, though his fingers gave a small twitch. You tracked him down. He tracked me. A moment of silence stretched between them. Outside, a pair of handlers guided dogs through training drills, their commands muffled by the trailer's thin walls. You're off the record, Holt finally said. Officially, you never came back from Kandahar. And that was by design. His jaw tightened. You ignored a direct order during Operation Winter Halo. We were evacuating. You stayed. There was a child trapped in the rubble, Eli replied, voice low. You wanted coordinates. I brought her out. I don't regret it. Holt rose, pacing toward the narrow window, hands clasped behind his back. You broke chain of command. You endangered the unit. And now you're here digging up ghosts. She was 6, Eli said quietly. And I wasn't the only one you erased. Holt turned, gaze sharp. That dog should have been reassigned, retrained. He wasn't. He remembers. Something dangerous lived in Holt's silence. Eli felt it in the way the man's stance drew taut, in the slower, heavier tone of his next words. If the truth about Syria comes out, Holt said, careers end. Agencies collapse. Do you honestly think they'll let you stroll around with that dog-breathing history into microphones? Eli's expression didn't shift. I'm not concerned with what they'll let me do. I'm concerned with what's right. Meanwhile, tucked away in the precinct's dusty archive room, Officer Dana Crowley sat hunched over a laptop, the screen's glow washing her freckled skin in shades of blue. Her cramped desk was buried under piles of printouts and forgotten external drives she'd borrowed from the department's abandoned storage space. The air was heavy with a fine layer of dust, like ash that never settled. The file had no name, just a string of meaningless characters. She discovered it buried in one of Rook's oldest deployment logs. She pressed play. The audio was grainy, but the words were still clear enough. A man's voice barked orders. Sitz, vor, zu. Then, again, quieter. like an old habit whispered into muscle memory. Dana froze. This wasn't just any commanding voice. It was Eli's. She rewound, played it back. There was no mistaking it, but the timestamp marked it as nearly 7 years old. She leaned back, breath caught in her chest. If this was genuine, if Eli had spoken those commands years before he even remembered meeting Rook, then only two possibilities existed. Either the records were lying, or someone had stolen memories from them both. Her phone buzzed. A message from a restricted number. "Stop digging, Dana." She stared at the words, then erased them. She understood exactly what it meant, and she kept going. Back in the training yard, Eli walked Rook along the chain-link perimeter. The dog moved with a calm, steady stride beside him, coat gleaming in the afternoon sun, ears flicking toward every small noise. It had been days since Rook obeyed anyone but Eli. The shift in him felt deeper than behavior, more like a soldier falling back into step with his old commander. Dana entered through the north gate, boots crunching against gravel. She held a small flash drive in her palm, her expression unreadable. "I found something," she said, handing it to him. Eli took it. "What is it?" "Your voice," she said. "From 7 years ago." He went still. "I don't remember training him," Eli said slowly. "That's just it," Dana replied. "I think you did. I think someone made you forget." Eli looked down at Rook, now sitting patiently at his side, gaze fixed on him. "And he didn't," Eli murmured. Dana nodded. "There's more. That collar? The initials, Easy, they're not a brand. They're a handler code. Ezrin Holt." Eli blinked. "Hole has a son." "No," Dana corrected. "Hole had a second identity." Eli's jaw flexed. "That's why he's burying this," she continued. "Because if anyone uncovers what really happened during Winter Halo, the civilians, the rescues without authorization, handlers working off the books, it won't just be your file they burn." That night, Eli returned to his cot. Rook curled beside him, resting his head across Eli's boot. The air was warm, but Eli felt a cold that reached his bones. He slid the flash drive into his battered laptop and listened again. His own voice filled the room, calm, firm, almost intimate. "Horzu, good boy." Reaching over, he ran a hand along Rook's neck. "You remembered, even when I didn't," he whispered. Rook exhaled softly, eyes drifting closed. Neither of them slept. In downtown Tucson, a fine drizzle had begun shortly after noon. Rain here was rare, arriving quietly, softening the sharp desert edges. The streets shone, vendors packed up early, tourists ducked beneath awnings, and traffic slowed to the lazy rhythm of wipers dragging across dusty glass. Eli Morrow walked the sidewalk near South 5th Avenue, left hand gripping Rook's harness, right hand holding his folded cane. The dog's stride was matched to his, steady and deliberate. Rook wore a plain vest marked K9 in training. "Do not pet." Most passersby gave them a wide berth. Rossner's idea: test them in public. One handler trailed far behind, but Eli needed no help. He trusted Rook, and Rook had been calm all week, until the sound. A dumpster lid slammed across the street, sharp and metallic, too close to the sound of gunfire. The kind of noise that could rip open an old battlefield inside you. Rook's reaction was immediate. He whirled, barked once, deep and guttural, then lunged. Eli stumbled, leash jerking tight, knees slamming into wet pavement. The handler shouted from across the street, but was too far away. Rook charged toward the metal fence, teeth bared, claws scraping slick ground, his body all muscle and raw fear. A woman screamed. A cyclist swerved into traffic. Eli struggled to rise, rain mixing with blood on his palms. "Rook, no!" But the dog didn't hear, not in that voice. So Eli stopped shouting, dropped the cane, reached forward through the rain until his hands found damp fur. And then he whispered, "Horzu." Rook froze. "Bleep." The dog sat, just like that. Amid the blaring horns and distant sirens, he went still, head low, chest heaving, but unmoving. Eli wrapped his arms around the broad neck, pressing his cheek to wet fur. They stayed that way until the handler reached them. Within an hour, the footage was everywhere. Melanie Crest, A 23-year-old barista with neon blue braids and a hoodie reading "Don't pet me unless you're coffee" had filmed the entire thing from a cafe window. She wasn't one to seek trouble, just to revel when it arrived. She posted the clip with the caption, "Blind man calms wild K9 with German whisper. Real-life dog whisper moment." It hit 1,000 shares in minutes. By the time Eli got back to the compound, Captain Rossner was on the phone with the Tucson chief of police, his voice sharp. "This isn't just PR trouble. It's a lawsuit waiting to happen." Slamming the receiver down, he fixed Dana with a glare. "You told me the dog was stable." "He was," Dana shot back, "until someone turned a city block into a war zone. People were scared. Crowley?" A child cried. "That dog could have killed someone." "He didn't." Rossner rubbed his temples. "The chief wants Rook pulled. Transferred. Maybe retired." Dana's jaw tightened. "Let me prove you wrong. Give me one more chance to show they belong together." "This isn't about belonging," Rossner said flatly. "It's politics. Liability. Optics. Then let me show the truth. Because that wasn't a breakdown out there. It was a memory. He wasn't attacking. He was reliving." Rossner hesitated. "You've got 72 hours. Eli sat outside the infirmary, a wrap on his knee, coffee cooling beside him. Rain still clung to his cuffs. Rook sat quietly, ears low, tail still. Dana crouched beside him, running her fingers through the dog's damp coat. "He stayed with you," she said. "Even when he lost it, he came back." Eli nodded. It wasn't a command. More like instinct. "German." Another nod. "Didn't even think about it. It just came out." They were demanding his removal, but to me, that confirmed more than it discredited. In their minds, he was a threat. "Then we'll show them what a real threat is," she said, "and what's required to return things to calm." Eli tilted his gaze toward the clouds. "He's carrying a weight. He won't know how to handle it until he's near me. That's not training. It's history." Dana rose from her seat. "Then let's uncover it properly. I've already contacted someone who can help." That day, the desert wind outside Tucson carried a strange scent. Not the usual dust or the tang of ozone, but something older, sharper, like stone chiseled after years of stillness. At the K9 compound, the breeze stirred tattered flags and swept brittle leaves over the gravel yard, whispering things only the boldest would choose to hear. Inside the training office, Eli Marrow stood in front of the whiteboard, one hand resting on the back of a chair. He wasn't moving in any way others might notice, but inside, his thoughts had begun to race. Not with chaotic noise, but with memory. A memory uninvited. The images arrived faint at first, like scattered flecks of light behind closed eyes. Then they sharpened a room, sand-colored walls, a concrete floor, barking somewhere distant, boots crunching on rubble. Then came the sound that unlocked everything, a child crying. Eli hadn't slept since the downtown incident, not because of the chaos itself, but because something had resurfaced. A string of sounds, faces, and words he didn't recall learning. And now it wasn't just the child he remembered, it was the dog. The dog had a name then, too. Wrecker. Training designation. RSK. K-17. The same dog. The same eyes. The same response to commands whispered between bursts of gunfire. He sank into the nearest chair, hands trembling, not from fear, but from recognition. He had trained Rook, and he had left him behind. Across the hallway, Officer Dana Crowley braced for a conversation that knotted her stomach. A thick black envelope, sealed again after being cut once, sat in her lap. Inside, reports, debrief notes, and a faded photograph of a younger Eli in tactical gear beside a German shepherd, both coated in desert grit. Dana had spent the night piecing it together, scraping through mirrored servers, calling in favors from federal interns who owed her more than coffee. The file had been redacted, misfiled, and locked under an obsolete joint contract between a defunct private military company and a shadowed branch of U.S. intelligence. Yet the truth was still visible if you read between the black lines. She stepped into Captain Rossner's office. He sat behind his desk, tie loose, reading glasses low. He looked up, gestured for her to close the door. Dana set the file in front of him. "Read it." Rossner hesitated, then opened it. It didn't take long. The photos alone spoke volumes, but the field log from 2018 sealed it. Handler E. Marrow. Asset: RZK-17. Wrecker. Last known location: Aleppo perimeter. Civilian shelter breach. Mission status: compromised due to humanitarian deviation. Rossner exhaled slowly. He stayed behind. To save a little girl, Dana said, while everyone else followed orders. And the dog? She nodded. Left behind, just like Eli. The captain leaned back, his face tightening, not with anger, but with guilt. They erased him, she said, but we can bring it back. Before Rossner could answer, the desk phone rang. The caller ID told him enough. He picked up. Rossner. The voice was cold, clipped. "This is Langley. You have a K-9 asset designated RZK-17 on site. He is to be surrendered immediately under Federal Statute 93F, subsection Delta. National security matter." Rossner's jaw flexed. On what grounds? His deployment file was sealed for a reason. If your department doesn't comply, federal agents will collect him within 24 hours. This call never occurred. The line went dead. Dana rose slowly. They're going to bury him again. Rossner looked at the file, then the door. Not this time. Out in the yard, Eli was running Rook through subtle drills. No aggressive showmanship, just silent hand signals, obstacle recall, and tracking work. Despite his blindness, Eli moved as though he could see the dog perfectly. Commands came softly, never shouted, and Rook obeyed like a soldier reunited with his commander. When Dana entered the yard, Rook turned to her, stance calm but protective. She walked toward them, folder in hand. "Eli." He paused but didn't turn. "You remember, don't you?" "Yes." She held out the folder. "It's all here." He didn't take it. "I don't need to read it." "I know," she said, "but you might need to defend it." Eli faced her fully now. "They'll come for him. They already are." "Then let them," Eli said. "I'm done hiding." That night, after the compound lights dimmed and staff had gone, 2 black SUVs pulled up outside the gates. 4 men in suits stepped out, each with a briefcase. They moved in silent formation, flashing IDs no one questioned. The tallest, Agent Ken Voss, mid-40s, crew cut, crisp blazer, had the kind of presence that made second visits unnecessary. His gray-green eyes revealed nothing. Rossner met them at the gate. "We're here for the dog," Voss said flatly. "He's not yours to take," Rossner replied. Voss handed over a document stamped with a federal seal. "We'll see." Before Rossner could respond, Eli emerged from the shadows, Rook at his side. "You're not taking him," Eli said. Voss arched a brow. "You're the handler." "Funny, you're listed as deceased." "Funny," Eli replied. "I feel alive." Voss gave a small nod to his men. Rook growled low, the air taut. Dana appeared behind Rossner, holding a flash drive. It was small, 2 wings, a gravel courtyard, shade from acacia trees, but it carried a weight of purpose. Inside, Dana Crowley straightened the last intake files on the welcome desk. She wore jeans, boots, and a t-shirt with the center's logo, a shepherd's silhouette beneath a rising sun. Her freckles caught the light, her hair loose around her shoulders. The nervous edge she once carried was gone. Peace had taken its place. "First one's here at 10, she told Eli, who stood by a shelf stacked with dog gear. "Retired explosives unit. Pretty rough shape." "We'll be ready," he replied. In the yard, Rook led a young shepherd named Tango around the track. Steady, calm, deliberate. Tango, only 3 and stiff in one hind leg from an old wound, followed awkwardly. Watching from the gate, Sophie Ruiz, a veterinary student with short-cropped hair and olive skin, scribbled notes. "I've never seen a dog train another dog before," she whispered. "He's not training," Dana said with a smile. "He's remembering how to heal." Rook stopped at the water trough, nudged it with a paw. Tango joined him, drinking clumsily. A simple scene, yet it carried its own quiet weight. That evening, as the desert cooled and the sky shifted from orange to lavender, Eli and Dana sat on the porch. Rook lay between them, eyes half closed, tail twitching. Dana held a cup of herbal tea. Eli leaned back, one hand resting on Rook's back. For a long time, no one spoke. "You know what I whispered to him that day in the street?" Eli finally asked. "No," Dana said. "I told him, go home." She smiled softly. "I guess he did. And he brought me with him," Eli replied. Rook nudged his leg, a gesture years in the making. "Do you think this place is enough?" Dana asked quietly. "For the ones we can reach?" "Yes," Eli said. "For the ones still lost, we keep looking." The porch light flicked on. A windshield rattled, not from wind, but from Rook's nose brushing the chain. Ready again. Sometimes the things we lose aren't truly gone. They wait for us to remember. Eli and Rook had been torn apart by war, by silence, by systems that valued fear over truth. What brought them back wasn't training or orders. It was loyalty, sacrifice, and a love that didn't fade. Some call it coincidence. Others call it grace. Because God doesn't always thunder. Sometimes he sends a wounded man and a forgotten dog to remind us. You are not abandoned, you are not beyond repair, you are loved, and you can come home. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Believe in second chances, quiet miracles, and the bonds that carry us through. May God bless and guide you, calm your storms, and remind you, even in silence, you are seen. Amen.